Our role model of today is Joanna Schroeder. Joanna, welcome to WeCan. You lead with parenting advice, with raising healthy boys and family equity. You are an author, an editor, and a media critic, and you co-wrote the book Talk to Your Voice, which I have here, which I enjoyed hugely. And you wrote down the 16 conversations to help tweens and teens grow into confident, caring young men. Your work appears in the New York Times and the Boston Globe and many other publications. You also have a Substack called Zooming Out, where you make your voice, your bold voice, and your unique perspective seen and heard. Joanna, thank you for your time leading with your story today. Talk to us about your new book. It came out in 2025, so this year. What do you want us readers to know?
I want parents who are raising boys who are hearing so many negative, discouraging, and even upsetting things in the news about boys and young men to have hope that we have many opportunities to raise happy, healthy boys who make the world better. And that it just takes a few simple tools, kind of a toolkit for learning how to communicate with them and to help them make better choices.
So, talk to us about that. Let's
Yeah.
expand. How do we raise healthy boys?
So we hear a lot about how adolescents don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, that sort
Mm,
of rational, thoughtful, decision-making part of the brain. In contrast, there's what we often call the alligator brain or the caveman brain
mm,
that acts on impulse, that takes over when we feel like we're in danger, and that helps us, survive when something goes wrong. And we talk a lot about how, our young people often act from that place in their brain, and that's why they make impulsive decisions. They may lash out, they may seem angry, they may swing wildly to being really happy. And we really wanted to discover, well, how can we help our kids? We don't want to change them, we don't want to make them grow up too fast, but how can we help them make more decisions with that prefrontal cortex, with that higher brain?
yeah.
And we spent years researching this. Through years of research, we discovered that amazingly, it comes from conversation. So
Mm,
you have specific conversations with your kids throughout their lifetimes, and they grow more and more complex. And we ask them through these conversations to think rationally and think globally, to zoom out on a situation and try to imagine how someone else is feeling. And practicing those tools, we don't even have to say we're using tools, we're just having a conversation as our kids grow up can actually help them move more of their decision making into that rational part of the brain earlier. Even more importantly, conversation is what connects us with our kids. It's what connects us with everybody. So our kids feel seen and they feel heard and they feel respected. They feel autonomous, which tweens and teens they so badly crave that autonomy from their parents, a little bit of space to find out who they are. So conversation is the secret. The problem was so many parents say, how do I start? The kid never wants to talk. And that's where our book comes in.
exactly. And you have all the different areas. So you talk
Mhm.
about communication, about masculinity, emotions, mental health, dating and relationships, sex and sexuality, consent, pornography, racism, school, sports, technology and screen time, friendships, bullying, inclusion, violence, guns. So everything that we should be thinking about, all the different
Mhm.
sort of areas where our children, but especially our boys, could come up with ways of sort of this gender, these unhealthy gender expectations that we hold as a society. So do talk to us about that a little bit,
Yeah.
Joanna, because I always think, I've read somewhere recently we should start being soft on people and hard on systems. And
Mm.
this is the same thing, and it applies to this as well. We have to be soft on our boys and girls, and we have to
Yes.
be really hard on the system and the patriarchy that we live in.
Yeah, we know that more boys and men, staggeringly more boys and men die from suicide than
Mm,
girls and women.
yeah.
And we also know that every loss of a boy or a man is a tragedy for somebody.
Mm,
So this issue was often swept under the rug because, like you mentioned, patriarchy created this system where men and boys felt like they couldn't express their feelings. They couldn't ever be weak. They
mm,
couldn't ever be soft. They couldn't let people in emotionally. And so it was sort of like, as a society, we were like, well, men created this and men can solve it. And I understand that instinct because we worked so hard to get to equality. Like my grandmother fought for the vote in the United States, right? My mother was an activist for the Equal Rights Amendment. This is my legacy. But raising boys, I saw, oh, wait, these are not men who created a problem. These are children. They were
yeah.
born into this society that was actively doing them harm.
Yeah.
Yes, in some ways, the society lifts men up, it props boys up, especially able-bodied white boys like my boys, but it was also pushing them down at the same time. So we had to hold these two things in tension. Like some men are doing great and they still rule the world. Other men and boys are struggling. So we believe we can address all of these issues without taking anything away from girls and women who we still want everybody to thrive regardless of gender. Like you mentioned, these boys were victims of patriarchy, just like we were, differently, but also victims. So how do we help them break that cycle? How do we help them break free from that feeling of emotional repression? Is talking to them about their feelings when they're little. And I wish that I had a book that started before the tween and teen years, but there
Mm,
are fantastic books out there about how to teach emotional intelligence to small children. We just didn't have one for this age group yet, which is why we wrote it. But naming feelings and letting them know that feelings are always okay. So with a little boy, when if he falls down and he gets the boo-boo, you have a tendency to be like, all right, come on, jump up, brush it off, brush it off. And we did that with our boys. I would say, oh, brush it off, brush it off. And it was a good distraction technique. But then if they keep crying, you got to hug them, you got to get in there, you got to, it's okay, it's okay. And I bet that was scary. Or um, I bet that you felt so alone because you didn't know where I was at the moment you fell down, or any of those things that you can imagine they may have felt, and naming those things. You were scared. You felt alone. You didn't know where I was. That must have been so sad. And now you have a ouchie and it really hurts, but don't worry. I'm here now. And then you give the reassurance. I'm here now, and we're going to take a big breath together. Okay, we're tough. We can handle this. Okay, here we go. So it's not just letting them wallow in pain and fear, it's also helping them have tools, starting from this tiny little ages of 2 and 3, and then adapting that as they grow up so that they can still continue to feel what they feel and still gain skills from us about how to process those feelings so they can move through them and not get stuck in them. The way we see that with adolescence is a lot of times a kid, like we said, they're in that alligator brain. And so whatever it is, if it's a social issue, a girl issue, a sibling issue, a lot of times what we see at a 13 or 14-year-old boy is they're angry, they're mad, they
mm,
slam the door, they're like, leave me alone, like you don't get it. And that anger is so off-putting. Don't know if you've experienced this, but it makes me want to run away. But the anger is okay. It's that there's that, but then there has to be more conversation. Okay, your anger is okay. I totally understand you're angry. Let's just dig into a little bit, because if we can pull it apart, we may be able to figure out what's going on and find some solutions, or at least just talk it through so you can let it go. Let it go over there. And then after that emotional processing is done, there do need to be limits. It's like, listen, we can't slam doors in
yeah.
the house. We can't throw things.
Mm,
I am your mom. I love you. Please don't say unkind words to me. That's just not going to be allowed in our house. And oftentimes, what we found is as long as we've allowed them to process it and we still love them, we're still there, that they'll be like, I'm so sorry, mom.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I slammed the door. I was so overwhelmed. Okay, I totally understand that you were overwhelmed, and it sounds overwhelming. And just seeing it and recognizing it, and like you can talk through tools what to do with that overwhelm. Next time, let's take a break. Next time, take a walk around the block or whatever. Come up with a plan together instead of taking this 13-year-old and saying, you're going to lose all your screens for a week because you yelled at me.
Mm.
That teaches them to push it down. We think we're having boundaries, but we're actually refusing them a moment of education about their feelings that they need in their lives from the people that love them the most.
Joanna, I love everything you say. And yes,
Oh,
I just want to say yes, and because all really important. And looking back at my boys, I have two boys and a girl, and one of them is very communicative and
mhm,
always talk to me about everything, and the other one isn't necessarily, and also will tell me, I
mhm,
do not want to discuss this right now. And then
mm,
I know I have to, respect his choice, and then I know I'll bring it up again at different times and approach it in
yes.
different ways and just come back at it because I feel it needs more conversation.
Yeah.
Um, Joanna,
It
so
sounds like
what?
you've got that figured out, which is great. And I'm like, you have two boys and a girl, and one of mine will talk about his feelings and get so deep and tell me everything that's going on. And the other one is just, I'm fine. It's fine. I'm fine. It's fine. And so we need different approaches because, of course, not all kids are the same. Not even all boys are the same. And they do need different approaches. And I love that you respect that when your son says, I don't want to talk about it right now, and you give him that space. Too often we think of ourselves as little dictators over our children. We think we're just being authoritative, right? But he has the right to tell you respectfully, I need my space. And that teaches him to respect other people's space too. It doesn't just honor him as an individual human being. It also teaches him that if there's a girl in his life or a teacher or whoever it is that's saying, give me a second, I need some space, that he's going to go, okay, this is what I do then. I react by giving them space. It seems so obvious, but a lot of parents aren't doing that.
Joanna, I feel that this is a real, we live in times where consent is a massive
Hmm.
topic, pornography is a massive topic. Talk to us about that for a second, because all the topics in your book are really
Yes.
important, but I feel that those are the ones that definitely, my children also, this is topics we've discussed really
Yeah.
a lot.
You know, we have been talking about consent. My co-author, Christopher, is a health educator in public
Mm.
school systems. So this has been core to his work for 20 years now. And it was a huge thing that I was writing about even 15 years ago was consent, comprehensive sex education in our schools, where they don't just learn, what the STIs are and how to not get pregnant. They also learn, how do you know when somebody is really wants to get physical with you, and the no means no philosophy. So I think everyone's on board with us now, and believe me, they weren't 10, 15 years ago,
Mm.
that every kid needs to learn about consent. With boys, we often approach this as, when a girl says no, that means that you stop. And that is a great starting place. But
Yeah.
it cannot be the end of the conversation. There are so many other things that are important. What about you? How do
Mm.
you know when you, this boy, are ready to kiss someone, to get physical, to have sex eventually? How do you know when you're ready to say you love someone? How do you know when you're we don't have those conversations, right? So
Yeah.
they also deserve the right to bodily autonomy, to not be pressured or cajoled into anything that they're not ready for, even if it's from
Mm.
their buddies, pressing them to hook up with some girl. So it's more than no means no, and it's also their own bodies, but it's also what kind of a yes is consent? What if the person that you're hooking up with has been using drugs or drinking? What if they're really exhausted? What if they've gotten horrible news and they're really, really sad? What if they said no and they switched to yes? What if they said yes and they switched to no? These are scenarios that we need to talk about that are all part of consent. So we prefer yes means yes over no means no. So don't just wait for the no. You don't push and then stop when there's a no. You actively make sure that the person that you're with is comfortable before you proceed with something. And we do start teaching this when we're tiny kids by asking our kids permission to wash them in the bath, or telling them about their own right to their privacy, and naming their genitals appropriately. So all of this is a life of education. But that's our consent education chapter is like, it's a standalone chapter. You can pick up the book and just read that chapter if that's what you're dealing with right then. We designed the whole book to be that way, because you may not need to read about power imbalances. You may
Mm.
not need to read about bullying. You may not need to read about dating or substances. You may just need to read about this one thing right now. So that's why we designed that book, because these are huge topics. So yes, consent is huge. It's so important. It's so multifaceted. Pornography, man, that is a really tough one, because I don't know how old you are, but we didn't grow up with the internet in our home. This was not a thing. And I had a smartphone. My boys were already walking, talking, and in school by the time smartphones came out. So my generation is so different from their generation, where they have access to everything all the time.
Yeah.
People say, well, I'll talk to him about pornography when he's 15 or 16, because that's when he's going to become interested. No. A recent survey and research done by Common Sense Media discovered that by the time they're 12, the majority of tweens and teens have seen adult content online to various degrees. So we suggest that as soon as your child has unsupervised access to the internet, that you talk about adult content. It has to start then. And if it's already too late and your kid has their phone and you've never talked about it, you can sit down and have that conversation today. My favorite way to approach it is with this analogy from sex educator Shafia Zaloom, which is, you don't learn how to drive from watching Fast and Furious, and you don't learn how to have sex or be sexy from watching pornography.
Definitely.
This is camera tricks. It's doing something for the audience. It's a lot of acting. It's faking things. The bodies have makeup. Every aspect of it is produced in the same way that a movie is produced, like Fast and the Furious. So it's amazing how many kids go, wait, really? And it's like, yeah, really, that's not how most people approach sex. It's not how they behave during sex. It's not how they look during sex. It's not how they communicate during sex. And telling kids, well, how will I learn how to have sex is often the next question. If I can't see porn, how will I learn how to have sex? And that's a different conversation. It's like, well, when do you think it's appropriate for you to have sex? And having conversations with boys that we rarely have, which is, what fits your values, you 14-year-old boy? What do you want for your future?
Mm.
What do you think belongs in a relationship? Would you like to feel like you're in love? Would you like to feel connected, respected? You having the love, the self-respect, the sex, and the porn conversations, they all go together into one. As much as we wish we could separate them out, they do go together into
Yeah.
one. So we it's very similar to what we teach with screen time, which is teaching kids media literacy,
Mm.
which is who made this, who did they make it for, what did they want me to feel when they made it, and what do they want me to do next? So same thing with adult content. How do you know that that person is a consenting adult? How do you know that they were fully consenting when this was filmed? How do you know that their safety was considered? And being able to get them to think, I call it zooming out, getting them to zoom out on the situation and not just look at that one little square on their phone, but to zoom all the way out and go, who's that person? Who's this person? Who's holding the camera? Who made this decision? That global way of thinking gets them to make better decisions about it. And then we have a conversation about if porn doesn't actually prepare you for sex, are there ways in which using pornography can actually harm your future sex life when you're fully ready for consensual, connected sex with another real human being? And then, a lot of that's going to be your own family's values. So, will sex with someone you love look like that? Is that
Mm.
what you want it to look like? And these are deep conversations. And I want parents to feel comfortable saying, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes the answer is, I don't know. And sometimes the answer is, I'm really uncomfortable with this topic, and I want you to know that I'm uncomfortable, but I think it's important, and your happiness and future health is worth it. So I'm going to find the answers and I'm going to work through my embarrassment, and we can be awkward together, and you can own that together. You don't have to be like, I'm sometimes overconfident about it. My kids are like, Mom, stop. You don't have to be like me and be unembarrassable. You can just say off the top, this is really hard for me. Nobody talked to me
Yeah.
about this when I was a kid, and I'm just figuring it out. But I love you, and I want you to have beautiful relationships where you fall in love and feel connected. And I want to set you up for that in your life.
Yeah, and I think we forget, or often the bit that's the romance part is forgotten, because in pornography we don't see it. And that's
Yeah.
what they watch. And the film industry doesn't make romantic movies enough anymore. I feel I'm
Yeah.
mid-50s. I remember when I was young, we were watching Hollywood movies
Yeah.
or TV series, and somehow it was the flirting stage and then the maybe a
Yeah.
kiss and then maybe, and you sort of learned that maybe this is the right time for this and maybe this is the
Mhm.
right time for that. And you were sort of modeled that. And I feel that that isn't really produced anymore. And I think Reese
Yeah.
Witherspoon said that in an article last week. And it really made me think. And I really thought, what content are my children that are mostly grown up now? What are they consuming?
Yeah, I have a good friend who called me, and she said, my son, we'll call him Bill, Billy, he knows he doesn't want to watch porn because we've talked about it, but he's really curious how sex happens.
Mm,
And I don't know what to tell him. And I talked to her a little, I think he was 14 at the time, he's 15 now. I talked to her a little bit about what she would be comfortable letting him watch. And because I thought, just like you, I was like, I learned a lot of how, eye contact becomes kissing, and how
mm,
kissing then becomes more body contact. And that goes to this, that goes to that. Okay. And I said, and she said, oh my gosh, I mean, I don't, he's 14. He could be looking at it all, and he's come to me. What should I say? And so we kind of looked around at some scenes from Bridgerton, of all things. And the thing about Bridgerton is they're very thoughtful about consent, and
yeah,
they do build up the romance.
yeah.
And so I said, you can go to Billy and say, listen, this is probably embarrassing for you, but like, and it's a little bit cheesy, and I know the costumes are unrelated, like, but this is maybe more realistic about when you feel attracted to them. And then I want you to notice that this character will say, do you want me to stop? Or are you sure? Or is this okay? And then it proceeds. And you can tell they're so connected. The characters are
Mm,
so connected, and they're falling in love. And um, that's a better model. And that's a better model. And it's more what I hope you get to have in your life. Whatever your family's values are, you'll have a different conversation. But that was a conversation she and I talked about. And then, just so people, I think it helps people to hear this, but he asked the dreaded question of, but how will I know, like, how to do it? And he already knows the parts that go in the parts, and the seed and the egg and so she said, part of the fun of being an adult and getting into a relationship with someone you care about and that you respect is figuring it out together. And that was such a brilliant move on her part.